and I had a studio session, and everybody came through. Sauce Walker, Killer Callione, Dolph, a couple other people, Kevin Gates. A few people came through that time, and it was all because I built up that relationship with Starlito enough that he trusted me, that when he came to Houston, he knew that this was going to be a good time for him, and we were going to be able to get a good studio session.
Let's be honest, you're not gonna find these videos anywhere else. Why? Because I make them. So it would really help me out if you subscribe. If you've already subscribed, what also really helps is if you like the video and leave a comment. It's hard in the era of clickbait videos on YouTube and negativity in the producer community, and I appreciate your support. Thank you so much.
About halfway through college is when I started focusing on music more. I got a couple of small placements. I did some stuff for the St. Lunatics. I did some ghost producing for some different things. And then I was like, all right, well, basketball really isn't going as well as I wanted it to. So I stopped playing basketball and started focusing on music. And it was a great decision. But yeah, it took me a while to really go full force leap into it.
Okay, ghost producing. How did that even happen? And what is ghost producing? Just because I've never... I don't want to get into my experiences with it, but what is it? I've never really fully experienced it.
So pretty much I was heavy on MySpace, man. I used to message Jake. I have messages with J. Cole back and forth before he blew up, all types of stuff. I was always hitting up types of people. I, hit up some producers that I knew had done some popular stuff. They reached back out to me. I sent them some tracks, and then they called me one day and they're like, I was young. I was 17 or 18, so I can't even remember. I was in high school still. And they called me and they're like, hey, we like your stuff. We think, this group will like it too. And we're like, okay, cool. And then I didn't really hear nothing for a while. And then I get into college a year or two later, and they call me and they're like, hey, you got one on this album, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, cool. What does that mean? But they're like, well, and at the time, and looking back, it's man, I was so naive and so young. They were like, well, we put our tag on it because we're gonna brand it under our name, we have a name, so our group, they're a Grammy winning group, it's a pretty popular group, and they're like, we're gonna put our tag on it, brand you under that. They literally just took the whole beat and said they made it, and then I kind of was, at the time, I didn't really realize everything going on, and it wasn't a huge song, so it didn't make an actual album. It ended up getting leaked and some other stuff like that. And then there was a couple other mixtape stuff I did for some pretty decent sized people. But at the time, I was just so happy to have people on my beats. I didn't really know what was going on. I was just like, oh, this is awesome. Man, it's all good. I'm gonna blow up still. And then once I started realizing I wasn't getting any money or anything from it, I pretty much, got taken advantage of completely. It was a lot of my naiveness, but at the same time, I was just so happy to be involved with something, just a kid making beats in his rooms. And now I got some pretty big artists, at least liking my beats. So that gave me inspiration to keep going, to know I at least had some tight beats that people wanted to brand as, ghost producing, for lack of better words. So. Okay.
So you, it just sounds like you got your beats stolen more than
basically. For lack of for lack of better words. Yeah, absolutely. For lack of better words.
But they made it seem like, because you weren't willingly rebranding yourself as, okay. And then ironically too, the fact that the songs didn't make an album meant that your credit would have been the best you could have gotten. And then they 100%. Even took that away from you.
And they kind of
freaking jerks.
Yeah, they kind of led me thinking I was going to sign with them. I was going to do all this. But, they kind of were holding it oh, this is the first of many, man. You're about to be. Because I met them in their hometown, met them at their house. They had big houses, all this. And I was just I was 18, 19, just this is amazing. Man. And then I met a couple of the artists. It was a group of artists, and there's one really big one. And I met some of the lower ones. So I was like, oh, man, I'm going to meet the big guy soon. And then, yeah, it was just one of those things I had, I was very gullible at the time, and is one that I learned from it, and kept moving. So
my mind is just racing, and I think I know who he's talking about, but I'm not sure. But what's so crazy is, yeah. I mean, it's just it's so ugly that people who already have a lot of success and a lot of money are doing this to people who have nothing. I mean, there's really absolutely no good reason for this to be happening.
And the sad thing is now now that I've ascend it to whatever level I think I have. They're hitting me up all the time now to collab and stuff and like get invited. I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, is this really happening? It's actually kind of wild. It kind of blows my mind. So, have
you had that conversation with them, or was it
Nah, honestly, it just ain't even worth my energy or time. That's
healthy.
This is not, like I got so many other things going on. It is what it is. So that's the only instance where I ever got taken advantage of, pretty much. And it was literally like my first time dealing with any big artist, and I was just kind of starstruck, mesmerized, didn't really know how it worked. I just made made beats in my room all the time. So
it probably subconsciously, at least, or like maybe a little bit, feels a little kind of vindicating to have them reach back out and just be like, I'm too busy, I'm not.
Absolutely.
Sure. Okay, so when you actually started generating an income off of beats, what would you say were the most important habits that you formed and actions that you took in order to turn making beats into making a living?
One thing that I really think helped me, and I preach this to a lot of other producer stuff out there, is the fact that I could record, or I had an ability to meet with other people, because when I only could do beats, it's so hard to get with artists, show them, especially I'm in Houston. So it's a really big city, but it's also a really small music town. So to get in with some of these people, and I wasn't doing a whole lot of online beat sales. I have a lot of clients that, come to me directly. And then in the past couple of years, I've been trying to get my online game better. But before, it was more, I had a studio, they knew I could record. And so people would come and it would just gradually be like, oh, you got beats too? Cool. Let me hear some of your beats. Then I'd start selling some beats that way. And I kind of just built up my clientele like that. Having that skill I didn't even have to tell, bash people's heads and I can make beats. I can make beats. Like, this is what I got. I had another skill that was valuable to them, and they needed to take advantage. I tell these people all the time, learn some mixing or learn graphic design, anything else that you can kind of maybe meet some people within, the music community or something. And then on top of that, you also have beats that will, just ice the relationship even more. So one of my most favorite and lucrative people that I work with, it all started just because I could record. That's the only thing I could do. He didn't even care about my beats, anything like that. And then now I've been able to get beats with him, and I tour with him, tour manage for him, all types of stuff. So that helped really be able to convert my beat sales a lot, because I was building up these relationships with people, and I was working with tons of independent artists, I was hitting people up on Twitter all the time. We have a lot of pretty good sized artists in Houston that have people signed under them. And so I was finding the people signed under, the Slim Thugs and the Paul Walls and all these people like that. And then trying to build my way up that, kind of my way up the food chain like that. And it would always work because they always want beats. The bigger artists get tons of beats and they already have their producers kind of but if you can find some artists that you fit well with, and they're really kind of up and coming, and you genuinely like their stuff, and you think that they're gonna push the stuff and stuff like that, it's a good thing to build a relationship with somebody like that, because you'll learn a lot. Working with artists is a skill in itself, being how to work with them in the studio, craft a song, and how to even just deal with them and talk with them, just be a regular person. Artists, a lot of my good clients, they're also somewhat, I don't want to say friends, but, friends to a degree. We have a good relationship overall because, they know what to expect from me and they know what kind of person I am from it.
How did you make that transition from making beats to producing songs and running sessions? I mean, because for a lot of people, that's an intimidating prospect, being in a studio with somebody, especially an artist with some degree of notoriety, and you might just keep your mouth shut the whole session. And if they record a bad take, you're like, I don't want to be that guy that says do that over again because it wasn't very good. How did you get over that hump and make that transition?
There's definitely a kind of a fine line between when you want to say, oh man, I don't really like that, or also let the artist kind of do their thing. It really came from a lot of working with these smaller independent artists. I was do so many sessions with them that I started to feel so comfortable that by the time I got with some of the bigger artists, it's something I'd done so many times. I was recording and making beats for people in the studio. And then one time we had a real close relationship with our studio did with a tour managing company that was out in Houston. One time they called us and hey, Kendrick Lamar wants to come record. And I'm like, all right, well, here we go. Like, this is kind of like one of my first big tests. And he came in, but because I had that, I put in that practice and that skill with other random artists that, yeah, the songs may have never saw any light of day or may have not even been the best song, but just putting in that practice, I felt way more comfortable doing that type of thing for all types of artists. I was still a little nervous, obviously. And I've gotten in studio sessions and, man, I remember I was in LA one of the first times. I was about 20 and I was working with some, up and coming singers or something. And one of the girls there, she was a really good piano player. She started doing some stuff. And at the time I didn't know much about music theory as much as I definitely do now. And she started doing something that was in like a 3/4 music timing. And it was and she wanted me to do drums around it. But my mind literally couldn't even comprehend what was going on. And so it was an embarrassing moment for me. I've had a few moments like that, but it was one of those things like I never let that happen again, because you guaranteed I went and I got piano lessons. I started really studying music theory. And I was like, I'm never going to be embarrassed like that again. But it was, and then after that, now I get in with big sessions and I'm way more comfortable because I took some of those small little, L's or lessons, whatever you want to call them. So it's a growth process. Like, it's just I put in a lot of hours, honestly. And I've worked with a lot of people that it didn't really in the forefront, like right at that moment, didn't come back to me where I was like, oh, that was so worth it. But a little later down the line, I was like, oh, that was me training to get to this moment or something like that. So
let's talk about this studio. Then you said you've been running studios for the past decade in Houston.
Yeah.
What was it like opening your first studio? How did you get the resources to do that? And then how did you keep it going?
So I got a little lucky my first studio because how I met people is kind of a wild story because I was hitting up everybody. I was putting stuff together. One of the first things in Houston that I did is I put together a compilation song. It was called Houston Smokers Only. I was about, I was like 19 or 20, but my goal was like, all right, I'm going to put some up and coming artists that I know out here and I'm going to find one major feature and then put that together. I started getting some of the up and coming artists. Some of them had a little buzz and things like that. And I was already building up small relationships. I told them, I was like, hey, I'm shooting a video for it. I'm gonna push it, which I did all that. I put up all out of my own budget. I was waiting tables and all types of stuff at the time. And I put it all together and that song started doing pretty well. Well, just by having that song, I ended up meeting I met Chameleonaire's DJ. His name's Rapid Rick. He was at the video shoot. Rapid Rick he was just starting to get his studio space going, but he was more of a DJ, he was Bun B's DJ as well. And so he had some connections and stuff, but he didn't really have I had a recording studio in my house when I was in high school, so I'd been recording and I knew a little bit about it and my beats were good at the time too. They weren't, next level, but they were pretty solid. So he wanted to learn more about beats and recording. So I ended up just through networking, putting my own plays together, meeting him. He had some funding through a different person, but he already had a little space. I ended up bringing some of my own equipment, but I got lucky with that situation because Rapid Rick, shout out to him. He really helped me get into a good situation because he had a lot of things already planned out. But being able to keep it and keep clients and stuff like that's a whole different thing because he was back and forth between Austin. He was still DJing for Chameleonaire, traveling more, all that type of stuff. So it was really a lot on me to bring in clients. And he brought in quite a few himself too. But that was when I was hitting, they call it the Sneaker Summit, which is a shoe summit out here. And I was passing out flyers for studio time. I would go to shows and pass out flyers, like all that stuff. I was putting in real groundwork at that time. And I did some online advertising, early Google stuff and stuff like that. But it was really a lot of grassroots stuff. Now we all approach it a little different. I'm in a different studio with a really good team over here. And we're a little more online. We do contests, giveaways. We do, challenges, all types of stuff like that. So we got a pretty good system over here. We're more online based now.
This is a very buffo question. Have you ever beaten anybody up for violating the studio?
No, I've never, knock on wood, but I've never had any problem at our studio. It's like never. We're very selective with who we let in now, as far as we definitely usually get some kind of referral thing and stuff too, just because we're already so booked up for the most part. We can be a little choosier, but no, I've never had any weird issue, luckily. So
So no spilling or anything. I've spilled stuff. I spilled a whole protein shake. Yeah.
I spilled a ton of stuff. No one has ever spilled anything on the equipment either. Surprisingly, like people have done some dumber things, like spill an ashtray or something like that. But for the most part, no. For the most part, no. And which I'm surprised as I'm sitting here saying it, because I'm the only dumb one that has spilled stuff on my equipment multiple times. So I've mid-session, spilled water on my laptop and ruined the whole session. And it was a great session too. So been there, done that. So
what? Oh wow! So it just stopped working then?
Oh yeah, it was a bad day. It is all in the keyboard. Now I have this little protector over my keyboard. So I learned, I take losses and I learn from them. That is one thing I can definitely say. They may do take some dumber ones than others though.
All right. So would you? We talked about you being an engineer and bringing a lot to the table as an engineer and as a studio owner. What other kinds of value do you bring to the table that makes these artists want to create songs and albums and EPs with you? Because you're not just selling beats or doing one-offs. You have real relationships, and you're doing entire projects with artists from Starlito to you name it. I want to talk about some of the artists that you've worked closely with, but what is it about you and your skill set that makes these artists comfortable entering into a 50-50 situation with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think people see how hard I work. My turnaround time is like if artists need something, especially, like if they need a modification made for something, especially something I'm really working on somebody a project with, I get it done. Like everybody I talk to, one thing that I always get complimented on is my like professionality as far as, hey, you need my ASCAP numbers, here it is, like boom, like you need an answer on an email, here you go. Like all the things like that kind of, seem like very small, mundane things, but artists and managers and all that love when they have somebody easy to deal with. Like, hey, I need session files. Oh man, this producer's got to, like, if you have a good database of all your files, then and you can get them over quickly, it helps tremendously. I think that I say this all the time, and but is this being like not like being a cool dude, for a lack of better words? Like don't be in the studio just all on your phone, just everybody like worried, like trying to get, hey man, let's get on the gram and stuff like that. Just like when we get in the studio, they can tell like I'm here for the music. And, obviously all that's great for branding. If you can, get your name associated with different people through organic ways like that, that's awesome. But I see way too many producers come in thinking studio time is a party, it's a photo shoot, anything like that, and they fizzle out quickly. I'm never late to a session. Like there'd be people that come to sessions and they're just like drunk and things, it's just all types of weird stuff that just kind of blows my mind to think like, no, man, we're here for like a real reason and a real, job, in quotations, for however you want to look at it. So I take it real serious. And then I don't think I have some amazingly distinct sound, but I also think I have a pretty, you kind of know what you're going to get from me. I like using live instruments. I like, I like more fast-paced drums, but also don't really maybe not have the same style as some of more common music. So different things like that. And there's this, it's kind of, it all kind of ties in. And then I'm just really good with building relationships, keeping relationships, following up. Like even we talk about Starlito, like I always make sure I send Starlito a pack of beats, and like Zero, like all these different people, they're always complimenting me. Like, I like that you stay on top of it. Even if they don't respond, I'm not hitting them up like, hey, did you hear the beats, man? Like, check out my beats. Like, I realize how busy artists are and stuff. And if they may hear something and it's not the right time or just not the right mood, it's nothing personal. It doesn't mean it's a bad beat. It means, cool, I'm gonna make a couple more and send it, and then just keep going. And that's the only way you can, that's a proper way I like to follow up with artists that, shows my value, but I'm not annoying them or something like that too. So
what was the artist you said you had the most lucrative music business relationship with? You didn't say their name.
Max O'Cream.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do I've toured 5 or 6 national tours with him, tour managed for him now. And all this is because I didn't know any of this. This just happened because we built a relationship. He came to the studio I was doing beats for an independent artist who had like a up and coming manager. That up and coming manager heard about Maxo. Maxo needed a studio. This was like, we were 18, 19 years old. He was one of my first clients. And we've clicked ever since. And it just started simple recording, but we have an amazing relationship. So that's one of my real good friends. And we've done some real good music things over the years. So changed my life.
So Houston is unique in the sense that it has a really healthy independent scene, and it kind of always has, and it continues to, in spite of everything that's happening worldwide. Houston's scene is just, it supports itself, it feels like, and there's a lot of pride there. And you've worked with pretty much everybody there. Who was the first artist you were excited to work with, and how did you make that connection?
So Devin the Dude was the first one I worked with in Houston, and that I traded him a beat. And for him to get on that song I was talking about, that Houston Smokers on, and then he came to the video and stuff like that. So I built that relationship with him through meeting some of those independent artists. I met his engineer that engineered for some of them as well. So Devin the Dude for sure was super amazing. But then my best one and my biggest song from some of the OGs is I did quite a few Chameleonaire singles. Overnight was a real big one. Cloud9, a few others. And that was all obviously because I was in the studio with Rick. Chameleonaire's recording still over there. Perfect, networking opportunity for that. And all of it came though from me doing the grassroots work of meeting smaller people and, being a genuine person and finding my way through it. But then I would always just hit different levels. It wasn't like I immediately came to Houston and met Chameleonaire. I met, a much smaller rapper, and he was coming to my apartment in Pearland, which is a little suburb of Houston. And we were recording in my closet. And then he, ended up getting signed to Slim Thug on a little deal. And then I met Slim, and then it's just kind of like pick my way through, different people. And I was always like, I genuinely liked the people I was working with too. It wasn't just like faking it, like, oh man, you're dope, let's work. I was like, it was people that I genuinely wanted to work with. And then, over time I'd work with the OGs or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, a lot of those rappers that but you play basketball, you're pretty tall then. So it's not weird standing next to Slim Thug.
Yeah. Slim's definitely he's a big dude though, but I'm 6'2", so I think he's about 6'5". But we're around there.
Okay. What's been one of your favorite projects?
Starlito. I'm moving to Houston for sure. That's kind of like, that's got my heart for a lot of different reasons. Just a ton of reasons. Starlito's already been one of my favorite artists for a long time. And there, every musician kind of goes through times where they're like, man, is this working? Like, dang, nobody likes me. And like, that was at a time where I was kind of like that. And that was one of those things that you gave me some validity to like, man, maybe I can do this. And Lito put me on so much business things, all types of things. So and he linked me with tons of people. It was by far, that project has my heart for sure. And then I put out my own album as well about 2 or 3 years after that, that I put a lot of money, a lot of time into, called The Other Side. That, tons of people are on it. A$AP Ferg, Dizzy Wright, Starlito, Maxo, tons of people. And that's got my heart too, because I put a lot of effort into it. I would never do a compilation again because it was so much effort, but I liked it. It helped my branding, and it did what it was supposed to do.
Did you release that totally DIY, or did you get some kind of distributor or?
I had a deal with Empire for that. That released through that, and then I had a PR team helping me with that too. But it was all on my shoulders, and the help of who was kind of around me.
How involved was Empire in?
Not that involved. Yeah, like if you're not, they're huge now. So when I got linked up with them, they were just starting to really kind of grow. And then they got to that point where they were, Young Dolph was, having some top 10 singles, all types of stuff like that. So, but they did their thing, and they definitely, any correction or anything I needed, they were there. And the branding of it, it's on Empire was at that time was really beneficial because it was a little more exclusive at the time.
Mm. So the Starlito project, number one, thank you for having me on that, because I was on a couple of records. And, to bring things back full circle, Young Dolph was on that as well. So that was cool getting a Young Dolph credit. But at the time, Starlito was really, really, really buzzing, and you dropped this project with him. How did that all happen? Because this is what I'm talking about. A lot of producers might get a placement, but they're not doing an entire project with a buzzing artist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was it. So that kind of really goes back to just being, and I hate saying this, but me and Lito are legitimately like friends too. And like we could connect because we both like sports. We both found like we would just find other common interests too. And that drew our music connection even bigger. He obviously liked my beats and I liked his songs as well. I met him through doing different independent artists in Houston. He was at a video shoot randomly in Houston for a song I produced with Killa Calione and A$AP Rocky. He kind of just out of nowhere is like, who made the beat? And I was there, I was anything I was involved in, I was going to be there. And I was there. I'm like, who, me, like ready to, and then met him, started exchanging. We did a few records over time, like a couple mixtapes here and there. And then I was traveling a lot. So I would go to Atlanta and Nashville. He's from Nashville. Nashville isn't far from Atlanta. So I would go to Atlanta and book studio sessions and then tell like him. I remember, I think it was A3C one year. I went out there because I knew a lot of artists were going to be there. And I booked studio sessions for like 2 days straight. And I was telling all these artists that I was starting to get relationships with, hey, y'all want to pull up? Starlito pulled up, Devin the Dude pulled up, Propane, a whole bunch of other people that were, kind of getting their own buzz on. And we ended up putting different songs together. Starlito released a couple. Freddie Gibbs pulled up one time, did a verse with one of them. Few things like that. So Starlito from that point saw the value of me, like how I could put random things together and just kind of play. Like I said, I booked the studio. I was telling, like, if nobody would showed up, I would have just made beats, like, and just took that loss. But I took a chance, and I've done that in a lot of cities with different people. Once I built the connection, though, I didn't just like blindly go out there. I knew I had at least some interest from them. I did that a couple of times with Starlito, though. I would go to Atlanta because I knew sending beats over email, it's great to a degree, like you can build that relationship, but I really solidified it with him when I would go to Atlanta more and book sessions, or he would book them too. Like once we got cooler, he would book some too, and we would just show up. And then we even took a couple times, I was like, hey, I'm going to Los Angeles for a couple weeks. I got a couple studios, this whoop-de-woo, and do you want to come out? He would fly out for like a week, and we would just record songs, and he'd link me up with Currency and different people like that. And a lot of it would just be me taking it into my own hands to be like, I want a lot of songs with this dude. And because I know that I know he's dope. And I know that there's a lot of because I saw the reaction from some of my early songs with him. So I knew, I was like, man, he's got a crazy kind of online fan base that I haven't seen many people have. So I knew, I was like, I need to get as many songs with him as possible. And emailing it doesn't work all the time. Like it's cool, but to really how we got cool is having those in-person conversations. Then we know we both like basketball and, all the other random things we talk about. And then we started collecting all these songs, and he called me one day. He's like, hey man, we got like tens, he would come to Houston one time. And when Dolph was in town, that's actually one of the days we did the record that you co-produced. Dolph had a show out here and Lito decided to come out, and I had a studio session and everybody came through. Sauce Walker, Killa Calione, Dolph, a couple of the people, Kevin Gates, a few people came through that time. And it was all because I built up that relationship with Starlito enough that he trusted me, that when he came to Houston, he knew that this was going to be a good time for him. And we're going to be able to get a good studio session. But then he called me one day and he was like, hey man, we got like 10, 11 songs with some really dope features. Like, you want to put a project together? And I was like, of course, and then finished out a couple more. He flew me out to Miami, paid for everything. We ended up finishing the project with his engineer out there in like 3 or 4 days, and then we released it like a couple of days later. And it's still definitely one of the best things I've done, just branding wise. And I've sold so many beats from independent artists now, from being like, oh man, I know you from Starlito's stuff. So it was a real big moment in my career too, because like I said, it was a little validation for me, like, all right, maybe I do have something going on, all right, because a lot of producers struggle with knowing if they're going down the right path, or if they even have a shot at this.
Here's something else that a lot of producers struggle with. A lot of producers don't want to show their face on camera. Certainly not something that you struggle with. Maybe you did at one time. What advice do you give those producers?
Not exactly that, and I'm sure you're probably the same. At first, I if you look back at some of my YouTube videos, they're trash compared to what I can do now. But that's the only way you get better is just to do it. You know, like if I would, and I tell people, artists and producers all the time, like just get on camera and do it. There's gonna be some cringy ones. There are gonna be some ones you're like, what was I thinking? And I look at some of my YouTube videos, I'm like, that's terrible, but it shows the progress. And the only way, it's the same with beats. The only way you're gonna get there is just start putting in those repetitions. And I agree, to build your personal brand, you have to show your face. You have to like show people some of your personality, a little bit of you in general, because a lot of people buy beats from me because of me. You know, there's not like they could go get hot beats from anywhere, but they come back to me because they know what I'm going to provide, and they know, like it goes, they know what type of person I am and my personality. And I think that resonates for people. You know, they may not even verbatim say it sometimes, but I know that all of that has built my brand to be able to resell beats, do EPs with people, sell exclusive beats in my city for, $1,000 for just random people, because they know what they're going to get out of it, because I've built that brand and that personality around the city, and more online now.
Beyond just showing your face, how important is visual branding?
I think visual branding is huge, because that's what most of the social media platforms are kind of pushing now. In general, if you think about TikTok, Instagram Reels, things like that, and YouTube, all those, most of them are pushing video. Voisey app, which is like all the other platforms are becoming more show your face and then show your talent. So I think the creativity with how you can show your face and what you're exactly doing is all case specific to you and your personality. But that only comes when you try and experiment. Some of my videos were more serious at first. I started to realize that people like some of the more funny stuff and little like whimsical kind of corny stuff here and there, but it actually worked. And, then I started putting my content more towards that. But I only knew that from trying, because I put out serious stuff before too. And people were like, man, you're too chill, like, or something, whatever. I would take feedback from it and just go from there. But I still wanted to be myself. So I don't try to like force it or fake it, but at the same time, like, you got to over exaggerate a little bit for cameras and stuff like that, because it translates different when somebody's watching it than how you feel as you're doing it.
Yeah, I'm the counter example. People love how monotone I am. So you've been posting a ton of content lately, a ton of video content. Mm-hmm. Did COVID have something to do with that?
A little bit, yeah. I got a little stir crazy because obviously we're not touring, or all our tours got canceled. So I got a little stir crazy, and then at the same time, I realized how powerful visual is. Like I used to be the cool guy, post a little, like my logo or something, and like, oh, check my beats or something. And I realized that wasn't working, and I was marketing a lot to produce, or like, the things I would show my face would be like me doing a beat breakdown. I'm like, the only people that want to watch that really are producers. How can I sell more beats? So that's why I started giving more artist content, because I think I have a pretty good grip on that. But I mean, even so, I knew what I wanted to attract, which my target audience was artists. So I'm like, how can I give something of value to an artist? And then I started, they'll hear my beats when I start giving them some game on that, and they'll visit my site and stuff through that. So that's the kind of approach I was taking with it. So I just needed to change some things up. So
I was going to ask you about that, because the vast majority of your content has nothing to do with your music, and it's not blatantly advertising in nature. It's a lot of music business and social media advice. So your audience isn't necessarily beat buyers. Your audience isn't necessarily being marketed to. They're more, like you said, you're thinking about what they could benefit from, and you're providing the content that you think they might need and they might gravitate towards. But I mean, in all honesty, and I'm one of those people that's been doing that forever, it doesn't really make money, that kind of thing. I mean, there are some people who are selling courses or books, and then like neither of us are doing that. And like this is free for everybody, for example, these NBC sessions, thanks to BeatStars. But you're saying that providing that value does come back to you, and you do see a return on the investment of time and energy that you put into creating this free content.
Yeah, I personally do. I think in the past few months since I've been doing more of that, probably, 5 or 6 months, I've sold more beats. I've definitely interacted with tons more artists that either want some type of service that I can provide. And it was just, I kind of personally felt like I was trying to do some stuff that I saw other producers do at first, and I didn't really necessarily think it was working for me. I kind of just saw it kind of plateauing. And so I was like, I need to get more eyeballs from the artist side. And yeah, if they want to buy beats and stuff like that, that's its own thing too. But I kind of always have been, as I was talking about earlier, I like diversity in music, like your skill set. So, I think that this is another skill set that I'm pretty good with, but it also benefits my production side without blatant being like, hey, buy my beats. These are my beats. These are my beats. Because that just personally wasn't working for me. And I've seen some producers do different things kind of like that, and they kill it. It just wasn't working for me. So I knew I needed to change something up to get more eyeballs on my page. And also it was a social media stagnant growth. My Instagram was kind of dead. I didn't think I would put out really good production content and it would get 1,000 views or something like that. And I was trying to like, all right, well, something's got to give, because I used to put out a random video 4 or 5 years ago and it'd get 10,000 views for something random. And then now Instagram is throttle stuff so much. I knew that there was a way to get more eyeballs to share it, because I knew that's what they really want you to do, is have people sharing your content. So once I started putting out the artist tips, that's something that people spread to other people. I've grown like 5,000 or 6,000 Instagram followers in a few months, which I've never done. And I've been on Instagram for 10 years, and it took me 10 years to get 20,000. And then a couple months I gained like 5 or 6. So that all kind of correlated. And at the same time, I'm still building all types of things within music. I really do consider myself like a music entrepreneur within it, because I have evil plans in the back of my head for what I'm doing this free work for now. Kind of be, I don't want to, when you do, they call it this is always a tough one to say, but it's when the reciprocity effect. I think that's how you say it correctly. But it's basically, yeah. That's basically when you give something of value to people, and then they feel like, I don't want to say, I hate the word indebted, but they feel like they kind of owe you a little something. And so may that be they buy a beat, or they share your content, or, whatever. I have all types of plans for it. So that's kind of what I've been going with the route of, because, I have plenty of work between recording and all types of stuff like that. But for now, I just really want to keep giving value to people. And I'm tired of seeing the success rate be so low in music. People give up so quick too, without even really giving it a real shot. They make a song and they're like, oh, that didn't work too. Because I'm a real big mental health advocate as well. So I'm tired of people giving up after 2 or 3 months and then, hating everything about it. It's like, let's take it one step at a time and really put a plan together. This is not a quick get rich quick scheme at all.
What would you say is the most valuable tool for attracting people to your beat store or to you as a producer brand, such that you're able to sell beats?
So I think utilizing as much social media and really having genuine interactions with people is very critical. I've started uploading beats on the Voisey app, sold beats off there, started up, doing different stuff on TikTok, more with duets and stuff, sold a couple beats off there. But the one thing that I think is really crucial to it is people always, and not always, I see that there's a good, usually like where they kind of test you. They're like, hey man, like, I dig your sound, like I kind of like your beats or something. And they want to see how you're going to respond to them. And so if you're kind of a genuine person that you're happy to be interact, like, oh man, thanks for the love. Like, I really appreciate you, be appreciative that somebody's taking their time to compliment your stuff too, because there's tons of other compliments they could be giving other people. And then I think that builds up some rapport with them. They instantly kind of feel like I'm not just a person pressing a beat and putting it online. So that kind of adds value to it. And then, there's tons of tricks out there too. Retargeting using the Facebook pixel has been huge for me. I run, different ads to that, learning that stuff. That's probably my biggest conversion rate. But now that Facebook and Apple are beefing, we'll see how that changes with the iOS 14 stuff. So, but yeah, I think just giving value and like being able to engage with some of these people, answer some messages. That I see there's a lot of tests to that. And then, doing all the things, uploading to YouTube every day. I have a different channel that I upload beats now to than I do my main, content that I talk about music marketing and stuff like that. So I've tried to, I'm trying some different things, and, I'm using TubeBuddy, all the tricks and tools that everybody's using. And it's just being consistent. It's slowly working for me, and it's taking some time, but it's slowly working. Each month I can see my sales increasing, my traffic increasing, all that.
Yeah, I was gonna say you were like me, where you waited a while to start leasing beats online. Why did you wait so long, and then what made you finally say, you know what, I'm joining BeatStars?
Well, you were one of the reasons why I ended up joining, because I saw you like literally just you talking about it and all the game and stuff you've given. Everything you said would make so much sense, and I have so many. I remember Starlito called me one day, and he was like, "Dude, you have more beats than anybody else. Like, it's insane, like how many beats you make and send me." And then at the same time, I used to be like, "Oh, one of these songs is going to blow up any day. And that's all I need. I don't need to do these leases." 'Cause I used to be real heavy in the SoundClick days. I used to kill it in the SoundClick days. And then I kind of got off of it, 'cause I was like, "Oh, I'm getting bigger now. I got a couple placements. Like, I don't need that." And then I kind of got a little bit on BeatStars, and I gave it like a couple weeks. I was like, I ain't selling nothing. Like, man, I ain't doing this. This is trash. And then I just kept doing the same thing I'm doing. But then quite a few other people too, I was just like peeping game. And I'm like, this all makes total sense. And then I kept seeing song after song get big off of being a lease, or tons of rappers come in my studio and download YouTube beats. And I would hear that same beat be a big song like a month or two later. And I'm like, what? Like, you can have another person record on the song, and then it can still get big, and it's not that, it's not the end of the world or something like that. Like, it blew my mind that people were actually making money, but then also being able to make tons of connections and get the stuff I was looking for with, I was chasing placements, but it's actually, I've had more connections since I've been putting out my content and beats even more. I've gotten way more like infiltrated in the industry than before that. It's way easier.
Yeah, and it's funny because I still feel like there's this narrative out there that the industry and the internet are very separate entities, and it's like, how is that something that we can even consider? And you hear a lot of producers. I think someone contacted me today saying, I don't want to put my stuff on YouTube because it'll mess up my placements. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, in 2021, that's what's going to mess your placement up. Getting your beats, because artists that are signed, and artists that are big independents, and artists that are going to be signed a week from today, they're all on YouTube, right?
100%. I have major artists. I'm not even going to name names. I've had major artists tons of times come in here, type their name in for type beat, and then rap the beat. I think Coda the Friend, who's a pretty up and big, he literally tweeted out like, I did all type beats. And it's like it's just funny because I see it all the time. Major artists come in here all the time, and they'll pick, hey, this is my name, type beat, and then they'll do that beat and release it. I hear stories of that all the time. Yeah,
and then you hear producers every day saying, I'll never make a type beat. It's like, all right, dude.
Cool. They don't even I see people complain about that all the time. Like, you're just copying other people and stuff. I'm like, do you even understand like marketing or SEO at all? Like, even the slightest little bit? Because most of the beats I make, I'm like, as I'm naming them, I'm like, I don't really know what kind of type beat this is, but I'm gonna just stick with what's close, because this is what I've been, sticking with this month or something like that. And it works. Like, people don't ever, every once in a while they'll be like, oh, this isn't a such and such exact type beat, but anyway, you're still getting some interaction with it, so who cares?
Yeah. So let's talk revenue streams. I imagine you have quite a few, and having multiple revenue streams strikes me as important, but especially now more than ever in 2021. How many revenue streams would you say you have as part of your overall revenue model as a business?
Including my touring stuff and stuff like that, I would honestly, man, I'm up in like the 8 or 9 range, I would say, because now because giving out all that game, I'm doing a lot of consultations. I'm doing tour managing. I tour DJ. I run the studio. I mix. I produce. I get I make YouTube videos now, and I'm getting checks from that. Like, just keep adding different stuff on top of stuff too. I'm sure I even missed one too. So I think it's huge. I definitely would not be able to do music, or I wouldn't have been able to sustain how long I've been able to do music if I didn't have a few different revenue streams. And then, I get a lot of, royalties and stuff like that from having all my business side on the back end good now, and things like that. But I would have definitely not been able to sustain as long if I didn't have a couple different ways to get it within music. If I just only made beats and only online leased beat, me personally, I wouldn't have been able to keep it going that long. There's other people I know can, but for majority of them, I'd say having a few different skill sets will help you tremendously and save you money for whatever you're needing that extra skill set for. I don't have to pay anybody to mix or record, or like if I want to work with an artist or a songwriter, I don't have to hire an engineer to be in the studio. I'll record it and I'm saving money and I can work. That's how I was working with Lito more, because I could record, so I'd pay $30 an hour for a studio or something. They don't need an engineer in there. So
how do you sustain that schedule though of making beats, of recording, of tour managing, of creating content and upload? Because a lot of us creatives have trouble doing things we don't want to do. So for example, I make beats. I love making beats. I didn't want to go onto TikTok because I was starting from zero. You know what I mean? And it was a brand new space. And for me, it was that I just forced myself to do it for a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden one video hit like 5,000. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm getting good feedback. And it's cool. It feels good. So then that sustains me, and it makes me want to continue because I'm getting good feedback. It actually feels good, and now I start enjoying it. How do you juggle all of these different things that aren't related to the core of who you are as a music maker?
That's how TikTok does it too. They love to blow up one video and then bring you back in. So I like TikTok for that. Really, I try to, I'm really good with scheduling. I've gotten way better with using my calendar. Legion Gabe, he told me not too long ago, he had a really good tip. He's like, pick your most 3 important things you got to do for the day. And if you can't accomplish those, then all the other stuff doesn't necessarily matter. And I started doing that more. And I also try to make sure I do my administrative email stuff. Like I do that first in the morning, knock that out, wake up, drink coffee, start emailing people back, answering messages, stuff like that. Just to get that out the way. So that way my headspace for the rest of the day, I can kind of be a little more clear and know like, all right, these are the things I really need to accomplish today creatively. And then I'm a real late night person too. So I usually try to get as much of the stuff. I try to go from like least favorite to my most favorite towards the end of the day. That way, by the time it's a little more late night or, 8, 9 p.m., I don't have people blowing up my phone. I don't have anything like that. I can just focus on making beats and the stuff that I really like to do. And it doesn't feel like a chore. The thing about doing all that other stuff is by the time I get to making beats, I'm like, thank you. Like, finally, I can just sit here and do this and not look at my phone and answer all these other people. But it is part of it. Like, it really is. Like, there's if I could just sit there and make beats, I would love to do that. But unfortunately, I haven't hit that career path yet. Maybe one day. But right now, to run a business, there's quite a few other things that you got to do to do it. And I think scheduling and figuring out what are your most important things for that day, and then limiting your time on social media is tough. A lot of the beneficial time, like don't be on there just mindlessly scrolling as much as you can. It's tough. They design it for you to stay on there, but I put my phone in the other room sometimes when I make beats or make content or something, just so I don't even have anything to do with it.
Is that hard on your social life?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, there's been a lot of my friends will go out and I'll turn it down all the time. And I've been doing that forever. Even in high school, I used to people would go out and I'd make beats on the weekend. So yeah, you could say that, but at the same time, and I hate saying stuff like this, I know a lot of people are jealous of a lot of the things I've done, traveling, making beats for such artists. So there's a give and take to it. Like, yeah, I may have missed a couple parties, a couple, hangouts and things like that. And, there's a balance to it too. You don't want to just work yourself to death and just be in it like just every day, just bashing your head and never taking a break. There's definitely a fine balance to it. And I take breaks there'll be a time where I just take a week off and don't do anything. And it feels great. But at the same time, yeah, there is a sacrifice to it for what you want to accomplish. Because if this was easy and you could do all that other stuff, everybody would do. Everybody wants to be a big producer or a big artist. So if this was easy where you could go out to the club and all this other stuff all the time and make it, then everybody would be making it. But it's not. It's a tough road. But you know, it's part of why you do it and why you love music. So
I noticed something about the more recent beats. So we've made a bunch of beats together over time, and you went back and revamped some of them to put them on the BeatStars. And when you sent them to me, they sounded very different. And I noticed your mixing has changed a lot over time. What are some of the mixing mistakes, we'll call them, that you made in the past that you've now started to change?
I definitely used to over process all my stuff. I used to be like, EQ, add a compressor, here's another EQ, and I would really overthink it. And then I've learned over time, obviously you need a good EQ strategy. You need a good panning strategy and know your basics of, the basics of making sure your kick and 808 has enough room and things like that. But it's a lot of leveling, and then my mastering has gotten better over time. Like what I've learned, like how to make stuff crispier. I've learned parallel compression, just small tricks that have kind of taught me over time where to make adjustments. And then I reference my beats against other songs I like in my car and on other platforms before I ever do. I used to just make it, put it out, and then maybe mix it a little more, but I was like, nah, it's good, like whatever. But now I make sure it's, it's crispy, and I've just put in that time. Like, man, 10,000 hours is a real thing. Now I can kind of know exactly what kind of levels I'm trying to hit and things like that. Before it was more like me over analyzing it and things like that. And I've also sat in a lot of studio rooms, and I constantly learn with mixing. Mixing is a science in itself. And some of the engineers that are in here are like, they don't produce, they just engineer. So I'll go with them and like listen to stuff and all the time. I used to pay people to mix my beats and songs, and then I would compare it to my own beats when I was first coming up, just so I would have a good base of what, I would get the mix version without a master on it. And that way I could play my beats with just the mix to at least know like, okay, it's kind of in the area. And I learned a lot from different things like that.
All right, well, we're running out of time. I'd like to have you on, sometime in the future, because I think there's a lot left to talk about. But for now, how do people follow you, check out your content, connect with you?
At TrakkSounds. Everything is at TrakkSounds. I try to make it pretty easy. TRAKK, no C. TrakkSounds.com is where my BeatStars is. I put a lot of YouTube content out as well, too. So anything like that, I try to make it very easy to find me. One word on all of them.